Henry Ford once said that anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or at 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young.
I've been running a home lab for several months now, and while I initially intended it to be mostly just as a playground for me to learn about server-side architecture, I found that it actually has a very large number of practical uses that have made it worth every penny I spent.
To give you a little bit of background, I started working in IT over 5 years ago, and if there's one thing that I've learned more than anything else, it's that the more you learn, the more you find out there is to learn. 6 months ago, I started to realize that I really had no experience with server or networking hardware at all. In fact, it was so bad that on almost a daily basis, I would be part of conversations at work with people from other teams, and I would have absolutely no clue what they were talking about. Conversations about everything from config settings on switches to accessing iDRAC on servers. I was just completely lost.
Fortunately for me, I'm not the kind of person that is just okay with not knowing things, so I set out to learn as much as I could about the back-end side of server and networking architecture.
As you can probably imagine, it did not take me long before I stumbled into the wonderful and incredibly expensive world of home labbing. After watching a very large amount of YouTube videos and reading a ton of posts on Reddit, I decided that I wanted to build my own home lab to allow myself that opportunity to learn.
And that really was my only goal. I really just wanted to learn as much as I could.
I quickly realized that in order to get a very decent switch or server, I was going to be paying a pretty good amount of money. So I figured I might as well get some equipment that would last me a while. I purchased a Dell PowerEdge 720XD on eBay for a whopping $866, including tax and shipping. It is a dual core processor, 288 gigs of RAM, and came with 24 terabytes of SAS storage. In addition to this, I also had to purchase some rails so that I could rack mount this device and 4 extra drives for about $73 and $80 total. I'll explain why I wanted the extra drives a little bit later. I also purchased a Dell PowerConnect 5548 to use as my main switch for this rack. Once I finished setting up the room that this rack was going to be located in, I started mounting all my hardware.
This was probably the easiest part of the entire setup.
I connected the Ethernet to my switch and then ran Ethernet to the 720 and nothing. I was shocked to find out that you actually might need to manage a managed switch. This required me to purchase a USB to RJ45 cable so that I could connect to the serial port on this switch. Luckily, this cable was very inexpensive. I was then able to actually set up this insanely expensive piece of equipment that I had just purchased. I set up 3 separate RAIDs on this server. The first was 2 half terabyte drives in a mirror for the boot drive. The second was 5 3 terabyte SAS drives in a RAID 5, which gave me my first 12 terabyte storage pool. And the third RAID was 4 terabyte SAS drives, also in a RAID 5, which gave me my second 12 terabyte storage pool. I then installed Proxmox on my 720, which was surprisingly simple, and that was it. I was done setting it all up. I could finally sit back and just breathe. Only now I needed to actually find something to use this equipment for. My first project was to set up Piehole. I had read about this and it seemed like everyone else was using it, so I figured it would be the perfect project to get me started.
I guess you could kind of say Piehole was my gateway VM into a much larger addiction.
This was the point when I realized that the whole home labbing thing might actually be worth something though. Piehole was amazing. With the correct configuration, I didn't have to run ad blockers on anything anymore. You want to watch YouTube? Go for it. You want to watch adless solitaire on your phone? Do it. You want to visit some fake sketchy websites that are trying to steal your information? Well, maybe don't do that one. But seriously, Piehole was so cool. Now, because Piehole was so simple and easy, I instantly started thinking about what other projects I could use this hardware for, and this is when I learned about Plex. I showed in an older video a small budget NAS that I built for storing old family pictures and files. Plex seemed like almost a no-brainer to allow me to access this media from wherever I am. Now, obviously, this is the only thing I use Plex for. Obviously. So enough about that. I also just have very little experience with Linux OSs in general, so I decided to build a Linux VM that I could just use to learn more about how to maneuver around using command line. This has proven to be one of the most useful things that I have set up to date. Knowing how to maneuver your way around a Linux environment is an incredibly valuable skill to have, especially if all you've used is Windows or Mac OS in the past. Now, about this point, I was realizing that my first 3 projects had all been super high-techy, and I actually wanted to use this equipment for something a little more fun. So I decided to set up a Linux VM to specifically run Minecraft servers on. I use this for both vanilla Minecraft servers and modded Minecraft servers, and I have to say, even after setting up servers on Windows before, Setting a server up on Linux is an entirely different ballgame. If you're interested in how to set up a Minecraft server on a Linux virtual machine, leave a comment down below and let me know you want me to make a video on that. I really enjoyed this project specifically because I finally have my entire gaming PC for just gaming, and I don't have to share it with a server that I'm running for me and the other people I'm playing with. Last but not least, I wanted to see how Windows 10 would behave as a virtual machine, so naturally I built one. I use this machine mostly as like an admin machine for my network that is always on. It has scheduled tests that run backups for basically all storage that I have. This virtual machine has one of those 12 terabyte storage pools that I talked about earlier, added as a storage drive so that I can have all the room it could possibly need to keep backups.
I know that you make the data hoarders of you proud. Not only do I have everything stored in a way where I could lose a drive and still have all of my data, but if needed, I have an entire separate copy of all of that data on separate disks. It makes me happy just to think about it.
I'm thinking about adding some disk shelves in the future to make more use of the rack space that I have, and maybe get my NAS actually moved over to the server rack rather than just in a normal PC case.
Yeah, so to say the least, I feel like I've got my money's worth off of this equipment in just the 3 months of uptime. And as a plus, my wife loves the ad blocking, so yay for brownie point. If you have any ideas about what hardware I could add to fill up this crazy 44U server, or any services that I could add to the hardware that I already own, please leave those in the comments down below. Next, you should go check out this video where I set up the entire room that this server rack is located in, and it's super cool.